Hi all. So we are going to be modeling our space on 100 North Charles Street. So we're looking at the Charles Center, and we're specifically looking at just this little corner bit of this building. The whole building is this giant Mies building, but we're just doing the interior design for the storefront space we've rented right here. And we're going to be creating a very simple model of that. We're going to be looking at making these exterior walls, making a floor, putting in a few columns, building in this ramp, and modeling some storefront. But we're going to try to keep it pretty simple. So before you get started on this, you must, especially if you've never opened up Rhino before, you must go through this tutorial that is posted here. And this is kind of a silly one, but basically it's going to just show you how to zoom in and out, where things are on the interface. It'll explain the difference with a NURB modeler versus a mesh modeler, and then you'll do different commands to these little snowmen people. For this, you need two files, which are also located over here. So the first one is here. This is the Rhino file you will download for that. The second one is here. This is really important to get set up before you do anything else. It has all the shortcuts that I use in it. So you will need to download these two, install this as shown in this tutorial, and then you are ready to start on this tutorial here. So to start out with, you are going to download our base file. So base files under Project 1, Storefront Baltimore, and it is, it should be the 3DM file, so it should be this. So we're going to download this. It's thinking. Okay, and now I'm going to open this up. I have Rhino 7. Luckily, all the commands and the layout is pretty similar in between the different versions, whatever version you are working with. So this is a giant building, but we are just working on this tiny little piece. So don't worry too much about everything around it. So we have our top view over here. This looks a little bit weird, so I'm going to reset this. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to set view. Actually, I'm going to go to Viewport Layout and go to 4 viewports. And that should bring me back to kind of the standard here, which is a top view, side plan view, a perspective view that lets me see how things are in perspective, a front view, everything is flat right now because it's a line drawing, and a right view. And again, everything is flat right now because it's a line drawing. I want to highlight over here, there is this little thing that says help. And what's really nice about this is that anytime I start a command, it'll let me know what I could do next. So for example, if I want to draw a line, so if I grab this line over here, it'll automatically tell me this is called polyline. It'll explain kind of like what it is. It'll explain how to do it, and it has like this nice little animation that shows you how to do it. So this is definitely, when you're learning, this is a really great thing to have on so you can kind of keep track. So for us, what do we need first? First, we need a floor. So I'm going to come over here. I have a zillion different layers right now, which is really confusing and annoying. The reason it's like that is because this was a CAD file and each of these was attributed to a different line weight. So there might be times that's helpful for us, but right now it's really not helpful. So I'm going to put them all into one folder so I can just kind of like lock that and not look at it. So I'm going to come over, here to the very top and make a new layer and call this CAD. I'm going to give this a color so I can find it. Make it like a bright green. And then everything else here, I'm going to drag under that. Same thing with this, drag that under there and then close that up. Okay, that's a lot cleaner. Now I can kind of see what's going on. Okay, I'm going to make a new layer and I'm going to call this floor. I'm going to change the color so I can see it. It's going to be red. Okay, great. And for my floor, I'm going to grab this rectangle tool here, and then make sure down here you have snaps on, end, near, point, mid. Don't put on center. You can use center sometimes, but not for this. Interior, perpendicular, tangent. All of these I want on, and I want project on for right now. So I'm going to double click on this layer so that it's highlighted, and then you can see my cursor also changed to red. And now I'm going to go ahead and make my floor. So I want my floor just to follow the inside of this area. So I'm going to take my polyline tool here, and well, but I wanted to include the columns. So it's a little confusing here. It's like, this is a much bigger building, right? So the concrete floor really goes like way out here. We're just modeling this space. So I'm kind of trying to decide like, where do I want my model to start and stop? And I guess I'm going to start, I'll have it come to the outside of this column line. Those are not perfectly straight. That's interesting. Okay, so we're going to go from the outside of this column line. So I'm just going to come, well, but then we have a wall there. Okay, we're doing the inside of the wall. Sorry for the decision there. So I'm going to come here, click, come straight down. You see how my line's straight? That's because I have ortho on. That's right here. That keeps me from making things at an angle. It's always going to make things straight. So for this, I have ortho on. When I come down to here, it says perpendicular intersection. I'm just going to click. And as long as it has my point highlighted and it kind of like reads what I want it to read, like this is an endpoint, I'm going to go ahead and click. So I'm going to go all the way around, click, 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 click. I'm going to the inside of the column just because it's most convenient, but okay, click, click, click. So we are very fortunate in this case that we already have a base drawing that I can just reference and click off of. If I wanted to build this originally and I want to make something more to a dimension, the process is similar, but you need to type. So for example, let's say I wanted to make a 3x8 table in the middle of this room. I would click, I come straight down and type in 3 apostrophe for feet. You'll notice up in the command line at the top that it pops up. Then hit enter and then click. Then come over here, type in 8 apostrophe for feet, hit enter, click. Then back up, 3 apostrophe, enter, click. And for the last one, I'm just going to align to there. And then if I want to check that this is really the right size, I can type in DIST for distance. I can check here. Yes, that's 3 feet. Yes, that's 8 feet. Okay, but we are very lucky that we have a base drawing, so we're going to use that. I have an outline for my floor. I'm going to double click on top so I can bring this back up. And now I'm going to use a command called extrude to bring my floor down. So I'm going to extrude my floor, extrude curve. And I'm going to do negative, let's do negative 6 inches. Okay. You'll notice right now everything's wireframe, like it just has edges, so it's hard to see. I'm going to change this to have some shading so I can see what I'm making. So come over here and change this to ghosted. Okay, so ghosted lets you see kind of like the outlines, but I can also see the solid of what I've made. Great, so now we have a floor. Next thing, let's make the exterior walls of our building. So if we look back at our image here, where is that? Okay, so you'll notice that there's kind of an exterior tile product. I don't even know what to call that. It might be a concrete. Anyway, there's this exterior format that kind of comes around, and we have these big storefront openings in here. So to simplify this, when I look at the plan, it looks like it's really like a bunch of walls around, right? But we're going to make this just a little bit simpler and not deal with all that and make this one thick wall. So to do that, let's make a new layer and call it exterior wall. And I'm going to make this blue just so I can see it. Hit OK. and double click on it so you have that layer highlighted. All right, so I'm going to grab my polyline again, and this time I'm going to just click on the very exterior pieces here. So exterior point, and I'm going to come a little bit past this one so I'm even with that. So if I kind of like hover over the edge here and then come down, it should draw a guideline, and I'm going to have it come to there. Okay, so I want to find out how thick is this wall. So I'm going to type in DIST for distance, hit enter, and then click on this point, click on that interior point. It's 1 foot 11 and 7/8 inches. Let's see if that's the same over here. I bet it's really just 2 feet. Yeah, I think we're just going to do 2 feet. So it looks like it's not exactly consistent. Here it's thinner, but again, we're dumbing this down a little bit. So we're just going to offset this by 2 feet. So I'm going to select this line and then type in offset. And then I'm going to come towards the inside and type in 2 apostrophe for feet, hit enter, and then click. Okay, so now I should have this curve and that curve. I need them to make one closed shape. So I'm going to type L, enter for line, then click here, click there, then hold down shift and click on that line. Same thing over here. Type in L for line, click on this point, click on that point, hit spacebar to finish, then hold shift, click the line, and then hit J for join. And you'll notice up here it says 4 curves joined into one closed curve. It's really important that it says that it's closed. Otherwise, it will not turn out right. It's also important, notice it's all on one plane. If you didn't hit project, sometimes things will connect to different levels. We want this all to be flat while we're tracing it. Okay, great. So we have our closed curve. We need to extrude this, but I don't know how far up it goes. So we're going to take a look back at these photos. So, oops. So we don't have photos of this space. We do have photos of the space next to it, which is AIA Baltimore space. So we're going to try to figure out what that height is, and from that make a good guesstimate for what the height of this roof terrace is here, or this raised plaza. So if I come over to here and I look at these images, let's try to find one with like the storefront in it. So a standard door would be 7 feet. Sometimes storefronts 8 feet though, and I'm thinking these might be 8 feet. I'm specifically looking at like here. So we have a door here that could be like a standard door, so maybe 6, 8, or 7 foot. And it looks like the storefront goes a fair bit above that. So I'm going to guess the top of the storefront's at like 9 feet. And then the top of this at 7 feet. So maybe there's 2 feet in between there. So going back to here, if the top of the storefront, then there's the question, is this the top that I'm looking at, or is that the top? And I think that's the top. So let's go back and look one more time. I'm not sure about that. We're going to make a guess here because I'm not sure. So in real life, we would go measure the space. So we'll try it out. Let's pretend that's 9 foot up to here. Well, I really think the 9 foot's just up to there. I think the door is probably like 8. I think that's probably 9 to there. And then let's call the top of this 10.5, 11. Let's call this 11. And then let's say this is 12. Well, let's say that's 13. So let's say the top of this is at 13. And we can model that out. And if it doesn't look right, we can kind of fix all those dimensions. But for right now, we're going to make top of this at like 13, and then top of this is 9, this is 8, and this is, we said, is 11. So let's give that a shot. Okay, so coming back to here, I'm going to extrude this 13 feet. All right. Now, I want to have cutouts in here to represent those storefront windows. The one thing that's a little bit tricky, we'll do the front one first because that one's not that tricky. So coming over to here, I'm going to make a new shape, and this shape's actually going to be is going to be even a little bit bigger than my blue wall. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm making a rectangle. So I clicked, and I'm going to click over to here, and I actually want to come a little bit past here and do the same thing over here. I'm going to use a command called scale 1D. Scale 1D, enter. If this is your base point, if this is your second base point, and then just bring it out a little. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to extrude this. We said 11 feet. 11 feet, hit enter. Okay, we're going to do something called a Boolean to cut this out. So I'm going to type in Boolean difference, hit enter. Then select this one, hit enter. And now we have the opening of that storefront. And I think the proportion's not looking bad. If I come back to, oh, it's under this one, sorry. So let's see, if we make this big, we can put this in. I don't think that's a bad guesstimate for our purposes. I think it's working for right now. It might be a little bit higher than real life, but let's just go with that. So for our second cutout, what's a little bit complicated about our second cutout is that we have a ramp here. It looks like the ramp starts right about at the corner of our building, and then it continues up. I don't know exactly what the slope of our ramp is. I'm going to assume it's 1 to 12 because that is like a standard ramping height. That doesn't mean it is 1 to 12. It could be something different in real life, but that's what we're going to assume. So I want to draw the side elevation of this so that I can figure out, like, okay, where is that really, where is my cutout really going to be here? So I'm going to go back to my Rhino file. Oops, not this one, the other one. Okay, and I know that I want to have a 1 to 12 ramp coming over here. So I'm actually going to go into my front view to draw it. So if I come into my front view, the corner is here. So I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to come this way. I'm going to type in 12 feet, hit enter. And then I'm going to type in 1 foot and hit enter. And I'm going to connect this line to that line. So that is a 1 to 12 ramp. I want it to continue the whole length of my building though. So I'm going to type in L for line, click on here. I'm going to hover over this point, hit tab. What that does is it continues that line for you. And I'm going to continue it all the way to the end of my building here. Okay. So you'll notice that my line's all the way over here because I have project on. If I want to move that over to my building, I'm going to keep project on and just type in M, enter for move. Now I'm just going to snap it right to the edge of my building there. And now I can see it there, which is a little bit more helpful. All right, so for my second opening, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create another extrusion. So just like we did before the rectangle, come over here, come to here to get the length, and then I'm going to select it, type in scale 1D, and this time I'm going to make this my base point, and I'm going to go out from either side. I'm going to take this and extrude it 11 feet. Okay, but I don't want to cut out this whole piece. I only want to cut out the part that is above the ramp. So to do that, I'm going to take this line and extrude it, and I'm going to have it go both sides past. And now I'm going to cut this piece. Oops, so I'm going to select this and type in split. So I'm going to type in Boolean split. Hit enter. It's asking me for the cutting surface, so I'm going to hit the cutting surface first. Oh, let's redo that command. All right, so I'm going to type in Boolean split, hit enter. First, it asks me the surfaces or poly surfaces to split, so I'm going to select that volume and hit enter, and then select cutting surfaces. I'm going to hit this volume and hit enter. I'm going to delete that out, and now I should have a nice clean little piece at the bottom that I can also delete out. Sweet. All right, now I'm going to cut that window out. So I'm going to do Boolean difference, select that surface I made, hit enter. All right, so now I have kind of that exterior wrapper of my building. What still needs to happen? I still need walls. I still need a ceiling. And I still need this storefront. And I still need columns. Let's do columns first. So I'm going to come back over to my layers and make a new layer. Call it columns. Change this to another color. The only color I try not to use is yellow because when you select things, it turns yellow. So I don't like to get myself confused. All right, so for this, I'm going to trace over these squares. So I'm just using my rectangle tool here, tracing over. That's it. Okay, I have them all selected. The other way I could have done that, I could have right-clicked on here and say select objects, and that would have selected them all. So these I'm going to extrude 12 feet. I'm going to check. Oh, I still have both sides on, so let's try that again. So I'm going to select objects, extrude, curve, turn off both sides. Make sure it says solid. Mine says solid yes, but yours might not say that yet. Make sure it says solid yes. And then type in 12 feet. Okay, there are my columns. Is there no corner column there? That's wacky, right? I guess it's wacky to me that like this is a column and that doesn't, but I guess this is more like a pillar. Or it's just not in the drawing, just fine too. I guess, let's see, what happens at other corners? Yeah, that must be just a structural corner. Okay, sorry. So we have our columns in there. Now we have some interior walls. So I'm going to make a new layer, call it interior walls. I'm going to make this a different color, and maybe I'll make it like a lighter blue. Okay, so for the interior walls, I'm going to make like 2 rectangles, and again, I'm just tracing here. So for here, I'm just tracing, and I'm going to stop at where we stopped our floor. So it looks like our floor actually comes to there. So I'm just going to bring it to there. And then same thing over here. I'm just doing where we ended our floor. Okay, so I'm going to select both of those. And I'm also going to bring those up, extrude them 12 feet and hit enter. Okay, looking good. Let's put in our storefront. So storefront is a little bit more annoying, I think, to model maybe, right? We need to model like, there's like a bottom plate to model, and then there's the actual storefront pieces to model. And it looks like this has like a plate on the top too. So there's kind of like a couple of different things to model, which is like a little bit annoying, but we'll get through it. And then the glass is in there, obviously. So all that said, I'm going to make a new layer and call it storefront framing. Sometimes if you can't name something, if you're in the middle of a command, so you have to hit escape. So if I come over here, I can type in storefront framing. And maybe I'll make this dark green. Okay. So for the bottom of this, I'm going to use my rectangle tool. And I'm just going to trace it. So again, I'm just tracing here. We're going to do the two sides separately because this one's going to require something a little different because of that bottom piece. I'm now going to select those two pieces, hold down Shift to get them both, and I'm going to extrude that. How far do we think that is? Let's see. I'm going to extrude that 4 inches. So use the quotation marks to do inches. Hit Enter. Okay, so that's what that looks like right now. Next, I'm going to do the verticals. So I'm going to come back over to here, and I'm going to make those verticals. So I'm just using my rectangle tool here. The nice thing about things that are rectilinear is that like they're pretty easy to make versus things that are more curved or have something else going on. Okay, so I'm going to select all of those. Hold down Shift to select more than one thing at a time. And for now, I'm going to extrude these. Actually, first I'm going to move them up. So I'm going to type in, oh no, I lost them. Oh, that's terrible. Okay, I'm going to right click here, select objects. I'm going to deselect that by holding Control. Go back to here, deselect that. All right, sweet. So I'm going to come back over here to my right. Can I do a select previous? No, I guess that's a Revit thing. Darn it. All right, last time. This time I'm not going to mess it up. All right, curve. Last one. Curve. I'm going to type in M, Enter for move, and I'm going to move it up 4 inches and Enter. Okay, now I'm going to extrude them. For now, I'm going to extrude them all the way to the top, and I can always fix that later. Okay, we know that it doesn't really go all the way to the top. Like if I take a look at this, and let's see if I can get more of that side view again. I really want this to be at 9 feet, and then it looks like it has like a different thing going on. So I need like one bar at 9 feet, another at the very top, and then my doors need a mullion there. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to keep project on, type in CO for copy, and then bring this to the top. And I'm going to have this go across the whole thing. So I'm going to use a scale 1D. And I'm going to click on here, I'm going to click on there, and I'm going to click all the way to the end here. All right, then I'm going to copy this. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to copy this. Copy this from here. I'm going to type in 1, we said that was 2 feet. 2 feet? 2 feet. And enter. Okay. And I'm going to do it one more time. But this time I'm going to do 1 foot. Okay. I'm going to do a DIST to check what is my distance here. 7 feet 8 inches. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to come down to here, bring it to the bottom. And I want to say perpendicular. That'll work too. Okay. And I want to move this up 8 feet because that's what we said the doors were at. So some of my measurements are definitely, approximate measurements are definitely off, because if you look at this, it just doesn't quite look right. So considering that, maybe those are 7-foot doors. I think also I have this at 4 feet and 4 inches, and I think maybe it's less. at the other areas, which might help save us a little bit of space. So one thing I can do is if I can get kind of like a head-on image of this, I can bring this into Rhino to kind of check myself. It's just hard because this is a perspective, right? So like I'll never get it quite right, but I can kind of get something similar. So I'm going to use my snipping tool. Copy that, save this to my desktop. Okay, and then in here, I'm going to type in picture and hit enter. Then go to my desktop. And I'm going to find that and open it up. Okay, and there's my picture in here for reference, which hopefully will be a little bit helpful. So I'm going to bring that corner over to this corner. And then I need to scale this whole thing because it's too small. So I'm going to type in scale. I'm going to use this as my base point because that's what I lined up. I'm going to come to this end, and then I'm going to bring that all the way to my end here. Okay, so it looks like I was too conservative in thinking about the heights here. It looks like they're actually higher than I anticipated, which is fine. So I'm going to take this and lock it. Just select it and type in lock. Won't move on you that way. And then I'm going to do a DIST to figure out how much taller is this. So that's another foot. So this is actually supposed to be 12 feet. So I need to move this up 1 foot. And then it looks like this wants to be maybe another 6 inches up. Let's try that. And that looks like maybe 8 inches. Maybe it's a full foot. And let's just try 2 more inches, 10 inches. Okay. So what is the distance here? Is this 8 foot? Yeah, okay, sweet. We need to change the heights here. So we're going to use a command called move face to do that. So I'm going to come to perspective. I'm going to type in move face. Hit enter. It's thinking. All right. So I need to select faces. It always tells me what it wants me to do next year. So I'm going to select. Let me try that again. Select face, move face. And then I'm going to select that face, this face. Okay, and then I'm going to hit enter, and then it's asking me a point to move from and to, turn off project, click on the edge here, then come straight up, so it says near, and type in 1 apostrophe for foot and hit enter, and then click. Oh, did it click? Okay, there we go, so now that's all moved up. All this other stuff that I did over here, I'm going to do a scale 1D on instead, because it's simple enough that I can do that. I just didn't want to mess up like the height of that angle and things, which is why I didn't do scale 1D on the other parts. So I'm going to come into a front view, do a scale 1D, make sure project is back on, and then come from here to here. And I guess I'll bring these up to the top for now until we put in a ceiling. All right. I think I could have actually typed that in. So let me try that one time. Scale 1D. I think I did these as 12. So let's say they're going to be, or did them as 11 and we want them to be 12. So I'm going to type in 12 feet, hit enter. Did that work? I'm not sure. We're just going to move the whole way. So click here, click there. Okay, cool. It's not looking bad. Got some work to do though, so let's finish up this storefront. So I'm coming back into my right view. Here, I want to make these shorter, so I'm going to type in scale 1D, and I'm just going to come from here to here, and then click to there where they end. This one, I just wanted to go at the length of the door, so I'm going to come from here to here, bring it to the length of the door, here to here, and these are all scale 1Ds I'm doing to bring it to the length of the door. These I want to go the rest of the way up. So I'm going to do scale 1D again, coming from here to this point and then going to the bottom of that. This is the last one. I'm actually going from the midpoint, go to the end, and then bring it in so they don't overlap. Okay, see how that's looking? That's looking a little bit better. Sweet. Okay, let's put in some glass. So I'm going to draw glass in my right view because it's kind of like the view I'm looking at. So I'm going to do a new layer, glass. Make it a light blue color, light blue gray, hit OK. And the material here I'm actually going to click on, I'm going to change it to be glass so it can be like a little bit more transparent and hit OK. Okay, so I'm going to use my rectangle tool, and at this point I've already kind of made areas for my glass, which is nice. I don't have to draw it from scratch. So I'm going to come in and draw that in, draw this in, and notice I still have project on. Draw that in, and I'm going to select those, and I can do that by right-clicking on here, say select objects. I'm going to go back to my top view. They're over here. I'm going to keep project on, move these to the start of my glass, and then I'm going to type in extrude, and I'm going to have to come to the end here. Okay, beautiful. There's my glass. The top here looks like it's the same material as it's like metal. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. Yeah, so I'm going to make that on the same layer as the frame. So I'm going to come back over to here. Come back into my right view. Making that rectangle, selecting it. I'm going to move this over. And I'm going to extrude it. All right. Last thing is the door. So I'm going to come back to my right view, and notice I'm still always drawing flat. There are ways that you can, there's ways that you can like define new construction planes, but for me, I find it's easier just to like draw in one plane and then move it over to where I want it. Not everybody will agree with that. Everyone kind of has their own methodology for doing things. So I'm going to use this to find my center point here and just come straight down. Once I have that center point, I'm going to use my rectangle tool to draw the outline of my door. I'm going to select it. I'm going to offset it 4 inches on all sides. I'm going to type in offset. Oops. Type in 4 inches, hit enter, and make sure you're towards the inside. And then this bottom piece, I want to move these up another 6 inches. So I'm going to select this so that you can see the edges. Then select those 2 points by holding shift, type in M, enter, click on them, come straight up, and type in 6 inches, and then hit enter. Okay, so this is like my door basically. That's like my door frame. I then also I'm going to need to do the glass. So I'm going to come onto here and I'm going to draw on that glass. Let's get this part done first and then we'll work on the handle. So I'm going to select this and select that. And let's look at these in 3D. Okay, so I'm going to extrude that piece. Oops, make sure that you are on the storefront framing layer. I'm going to extrude that piece maybe 2 inches. I'm then going to grab the glass, make sure I'm on the glass layer. I'm going to move it in 1/2 an inch, and then I'm going to extrude it 1 inch, which is thick for glass, but I think that'll look okay. So now this little door handle here, we want to be able to get the curve of that. And it's probably like a swept thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sweep to do that. I do want to get the length, the basic length out of here and the basic height out of here. So I'm going to use a little rectangle tool to kind of draw. Oh, let me make a new layer. This is a door pull. Okay. So I have this thing for my door pull. I'm going to extrude this. Let's say the door pull is like 4 inches deep, which might be a little bit too deep. We'll leave it there. Okay, so I did that just to give myself a blocking. So now if I look over at this door over here, I'm going to use this to create the outline of my shape. I'm going to come over here to polyline. I'm going to outline this, just the 3 sides. Then I'm going to select it and type in fillet corners, and I'm going to give it a radius of 1 inch and hit enter. And actually, I'm going to do a little more than that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do 1.5 inches and hit enter. So that's giving me kind of a nice radius. And now I'm going to look at that in 3D. And I bet this is way off somewhere wacky. So I'm going to move it. So it's centered in there. I'm going to do Z enter, S enter to zoom in just on that little piece while it's highlighted, zoom selected. Okay, so I want to sweep a circle around here to make my handrail. So I'm going to get rid of project for a second. And I'm going to make my circle that wide. I'm going to select it, and then I need to rotate it. So type in rotate 3D. Click this is a rotation axis. This is your other one. And then you're going to come straight to 90. Okay, I'm going to move this, the top of this, so that it is touching that. Okay, and now I'm going to use a command called sweep 1. I'm going to delete this. So type in sweep 1, select your rail is this, select your sweep shape is that, and hit enter. And okay, so there is my handle. And that looks way too thick, right? That's kind of ridiculous. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to change the radius of this. And actually the other, yeah. So I'm going to do a scale. Come here, and just bring it. Ooh. It wants my reference point. Whoa, hang on, try that again. Base point, first reference point, second reference point. I want it to be shorter. Ah, there we go. Let's try that. Okay, so now I'm going to do sweep 1, rail, this, enter. Okay, still a little bit thick, but fine. So now I have all the parts of my door. I'm going to group them. Select them, type in group, hit enter. From the front, back in my right view rather, I'm going to type in MI for mirror, hit enter, and then I'm going to click here, come straight down and click. And now I have my handles on there. I made a little mistake. I never put the back on that that handle. So I'm going to ungroup. I'm going to ungroup this. So I'm going to go back to here, ungroup, select this, mirror it around the center so that I have it in the front and the back. And then I'm going to go ahead and select those pieces again and group them again. Okay, and then I'm going to mirror it. I can mirror it around the center of the door. And there I have my door. I think we're ready to get rid of this. So I'm going to type in unlock. And I can delete that out. All right, so I'm going to select my two doors, and in top view, I'm going to enter and bring them to where they need to be. So I'm looking at my plan to figure that out, and I'm just going to center them in here. Okay, let's see how our model's looking. Oh, I didn't have project on, so see how they moved like a crazy way? Turn project back on, and then you can just move this corner back to that corner. It was just snapping to something wacky. All right. And then select anything on there, Z enter, S enter, and that'll help me zoom back in. All right, so we're getting really close. I just want to add in storefront for this side, and then we want to add in some details for the ceiling so that you have that information. Oh, and we're missing a door over here. So let's start out with the door over there, or let's do the other storefront and then go to the door over there. So what's our other storefront look like? Let's take a look. It looks very similar. It looks like it's three equal pieces with that top piece. So let's go ahead and try to draw that in our front view. So I'm going to come over to front view, and I'm going to delete what's out here so it doesn't distract me. Okay. So first thing I want to do is divide this into three equal panels. So I'm going to come back to my storefront framing, draw a line here, and then type in divide, and then number of segments, type in 3. Okay, so that gives me the center lines of those framing pieces. Next thing, we're going to make our frame a little bit differently this time. I'm going to make the whole outside one piece. So I'm going to go ahead and click on those corners that we've already drawn. I'm going to select the whole thing and then type in offset. I'm going to offset it 4 inches and hit enter. And then I'm going to select it. And we're going to extrude that. So what was the distance over here that we extruded it? It only looks like 1 inch or something. I'm sure it's much deeper in person. Really? That's 4 inches from here to here? That's 4 inches. Never mind. We extruded it 4 inches, which could be right. Okay. So coming back to front view, let's extrude that 4 inches. Okay, we need those center pieces. So here, I'm going to offset this 2 inches to each side. So offset 2 inches to one side, 2 inches to the other side, hit enter, hit enter. Okay, and now I'm going to use that to trace my piece. So I'm going to get these corners. I'm using a polyline to trace those. Oops, undo if you can type U spacebar to undo. If you click on something you don't mean to. All right, so I've got these two. I'm going to come to my front view and I'm going to extrude those 4 inches. Okay, so I'm building my frame out here, but it's looking okay. Now we just need to add in the glass. So we're pros at this by now. We got to switch to our glass layer and just tracing the interior of this. Okay, I have all the curves I need to make it. So I'm going to select this here and I'm going to move it back into place before I extrude the glass. So I'm going to take this and move it. I want to move it straight so it's perpendicular intersection. Fabulous. And now I'm going to go ahead and extrude the glass. So I'm going to select this curve, that curve, and next curve. I guess I could have actually just built that straight from my plan rather than dividing it, but we already did this way, so that's what we're doing. All right, so I'm going to move this straight back to here and then extrude it to there. Okay. Oh, I forgot all about this divider panel that we have going on. So we're going to use some move faces to put that in. So in top view, I'm going to copy this from this point over to this intersection. I want to zoom way in to make sure I'm like getting the right one. It looks like I didn't, so I'm going to move it from that point to that point. And then I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to rotate from here this way 90 degrees so it lines up with that. I'm going to scale 1D. Actually, this might be this right size already. I'm going to move it to there. Let's see, how are we doing? It's close, so I'm going to do scale 1D. Click on this corner. Click on that corner. Click to there. Okay, so now that's in the right place. Let's take a look at what our side elevation looks like again. So it looks like those don't want to go the whole way up. And then we're going to have like a plate in there again. So we're going to use some move face to get that to happen. So I'm going to type in move face. And I want to select the tops of, I'm going to turn off the exterior wall a second. So I want to select the tops of the glass here, as well as the tops of the mullions. So I want that square. Okay, once you have all this, hit spacebar and then turn off project a second. And I'm going to move this to the bottom of that perpendicular intersection. All right, cool. So we need to put in the top plate here. So I'm going to come back into my front view. That's just a rectangle. I can make that. Put my rectangle on from here to here. I'm going to select it. And it looks like it is flat. Good. I'm going to move it back to where the glass is. Put project on so you don't move it somewhere crazy. And then extrude that to the thickness of the glass. Okay, I'm going to turn my exterior walls back on. All right, that's starting to look pretty close. We're doing great. So I'm going to do File, Save. So what about this ceiling? I don't know what's going on with it. Let's check out the AA space and see what theirs looks like. So, I can't really see it much. Let's see if we can see it in a different picture. It looks like it is a waffle ceiling. Oh, that's fun. I didn't know that. Okay, so let's try to build that. And I know the space we have does not yet have lighting in it. So we'll have to add that in. You'll add that in your actual design. Okay, so to start with, we're just going to put concrete over the top because it would have like a top layer, and then we will work on making a waffle. So if I go to the top view, I'm going to make a new layer and call this roof. And I'll go ahead and make it like a purpley color. Double click on it. And for this, we're doing a rectangle. And we're going to go from our exterior wall. And obviously it keeps going. We're just going to go kind of to where we stopped our columns over here. Okay. I want to start this height. I'm going to move it, keep project on, move it up to the top here. I'm going to extrude that -6 inches. Actually, that's a little bit too much. Try that again. -4 inches, and I enter. Okay. So that's like, my piece should be kind of all like cut off now. That's like the top of it. So I'm going to make a second one that we're going to cut the waffles out of, and that's going to have a 6-inch thickness. So I can actually use the same curve I just made. I'm going to move it down. So type in M, enter, just move it down to there, and then extrude that 6 inches. Oops, -6 inches. Okay, so I want to cut the waffles out of that, but first I need to make a waffle pattern to make that happen. So let's pretend our waffles are 1 foot. No, let's start with my 2 foot by 2 foot. Is that too big? Let's look at those waffles again. Oh, that's too big. Let's say they're 18 inches by 18 inches. They look a little bigger than 1 by 1 to me. They could be 1 by 1 though. Let's see. So that you figure is a 4 foot fixture, let's say. Or actually, this picture we can see up close. That looks like an 8 foot or a 6 foot. Let's say that's an 8 foot, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so they might actually be 2 feet each. If this is a 2 foot, 1, 2, I think they're 2 foot each. So I come over here and do 2 foot by 2 foot. Okay. But really we want to offset this because it's got to have some space around it. So I'm going to offset it. Take a look again. Let's offset it like an inch. So 1 inch. Okay, and then we want to round the corners. So I'm going to do fillet corners. And we're going to fill it at 2 inches and see what that looks like. That doesn't look bad. Okay, so we want to cut these out of the ceiling all the way across. I'm going to bring these to start right at the corner of our ceiling. And obviously there would be a different detail at the column, but we're not going to worry about that for right now. So I'm going to put these on their own layer just to make them easy to select. So I'm going to call this waffles. And I'll make it an orangey red. Okay. And select this, right click, hit change object layer to move it to that layer. We're going to use a command called array. So I'm going to select this, type in array. It's asking for the number in the X direction. So how many are going this way? I'm going to say, I don't know, 20. Actually, this space is about 24 by 24. So if they're 2 feet each, I should only need like 12. Let's do 14. And number in Y direction. Let's do that also, 14. Number in Z direction, 1. And then unit cell or X spacing. So we're going to use that exterior one we made for our unit cell spacing. And then we're actually going to change this. It looks like we only need like 12. Yeah, it looks like we only need 12. Yeah, 12 by 12. So we're going to change this to 12. Enter. And we're going to change the Y number to 12 and hit enter. And then hit enter to accept. All right, sweet. So let's just move these so that they're centered a little more. So I'm going to right click on here, select objects, and I'm going to move them down a little bit. And this I'm just eyeballing to kind of get it about right. I think it'll look better in our images if we don't have it intersecting with that wall. So we're going to cheat a little bit, do a scale 1D. I'm going to start here, go to here, and I just want to bring that inside my wall a tiny bit so it looks a little bit less weird. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So in my right view, make sure these are still selected, select objects. Okay, I'm going to move these up close to my waffle. And then I'm going to extrude them. And I'm going to extrude them to about there. Okay. Now I'm going to cut them out of my waffle. So I'm going to select the waffle. It might be easier to do in a side view. And then I'm going to type in Boolean difference. And then I'm going to right click on waffles and hit select objects and hit enter. And this might fail because it's a lot of thinking for the computer. But if it worked, we should have one surface that's like all pretty. Beautiful. Okay, there's our space. Thank you for hanging in there. I know it's not easy and I know it is long. We are not applying super materials to this yet, but we can do it in the future. But what is kind of cool, if you change this to rendered view, so if you go over here, set view, put it up here towards the top and go to ray traced. So just rendered, let's just do rendered first before it crashes my computer. You can kind of see what it would look like, and then let's see if we do ray traced. Ray traced is a little bit slower because it's actually like calculating it. Then you can see the space. Actually, let's change this back to rendered. Ray traced is way too slow. I can also make it so that you don't see all the lines when it's in rendered. So if I type in, I think it's under display properties. If I go over here to, well, I think it's this. If I go to display options, yeah, so I can go to rendered and I can get rid of show curves and hit OK. And that'll just make it a little bit cleaner so I can actually see what it looks like. And you can see our columns in there. Yeah, you're all set. So please save this file and upload it to Canvas and do the assignment. Thank you so much.